Welcome back to the Reidel Law Firm YouTube channel. Today I had a question from a client, or not specifically today, but recently, about why my law firm was a sole proprietorship for almost 10 years, and that's what we're going to chat about today. Hey, don't forget, we help folks with franchising, we help folks with business in Texas, and we help folks with international trade matters. If we can work with you on that and get you to the goal line, reach out. We'd love to chat with you and see what we can do for you. So let's talk about the sole proprietorship and why I was a sole proprietor in my law firm for almost 10 years. So sole proprietorship, let's define that first, folks who don't know. That is you doing business in your own personal name, right? So you are not an entity. You are not in any partnership. You are just doing business specifically as yourself. You're signing contracts yourself in your personal capacity. You're doing business in your personal capacity, and you have the risks and liabilities personally. You don't have it in any entity, right? The contracts are not contained in an entity that the entity is responsible for. You're responsible for it personally, right? So some of our first advice to businesses is like, don't be a sole proprietor. Form an entity. Put your risk in a bubble. Right? Keep that bubble safe, all right? You don't want everything coming out of that bubble and touching your personal assets. So why did I not do that, right? I'm the lawyer giving that advice. Why am I not following my own advice? So there's a caveat, and this is really for doctors and lawyers, maybe some other professionals, maybe CPAs, I'm not sure. There's some caveats, for professionals. You as a professional, as a lawyer or a doctor, maybe a CPA, you are responsible, regardless of the entity, you're responsible for the work that you do with your hands, right? The work that you do, the advice that you're giving, the things that you have done specifically yourself with your own hands, right? Your own mind, you are responsible for that, right? So me as a lawyer, if I give bad advice or, do something wrong with client funds or whatever, I can't say, oh, now my law firm's responsible for that. No, I'm the one who did it. I'm personally responsible. So since I didn't have employees, I had some contractors and of counsel, but I did not have employees for the bulk of those 10 years. And because of that, being a sole proprietor made sense. It didn't make sense for me to form an entity because I didn't get any protection. Frankly, I'm one of those professionals that has to own up for what I'm doing, which is fine. It's not a big deal, right? It is what it is. I'm a professional. When I'm giving advice, people need to trust that. And people need to know that my entity isn't going to be some magical shield that prevents them from having recourse, right? And that's okay. So that's why I was a sole proprietor. I didn't get the benefit of it until I started hiring employees. Right now, my attorneys and other employees in my firm who are handling certain aspects of my business, right? Not the legal work unless they're attorneys. But any aspect of it where if they cause some issue that damages a client, right, or whatever, does something wrong, now the law firm entity, my professional corporation, is responsible and not necessarily me, right? Depends on what it is exactly still. There are some rules for professionals, but the general rule is employees of a company, of an entity, the responsibility stays with the entity. It's not going to reach out to the ownership, right? If I was not involved in something, in a case, for example, I don't do cases, but if I was involved in a case that went south or whatever and damaged a client, then I would be responsible. Now, if it was my attorney that was wholly responsible for that case, I didn't touch it, and they did something wrong, now my entity is responsible, right? So it has to be with what you've done with your own hands, right? What you are doing specifically yourself. That's the caveat for professionals. So that's why. It's a really good question. So I'm giving advice but not following it, and there's a reason. There's like a deeper legal reason why I didn't do that. I am now a professional corporation because I have employees now, and we need to manage those types of things. It also makes sense for a tax reason. Once you start hiring people and paying yourself, it just makes sense to have an entity from a tax perspective. But, before that, it was a liability thing, right, for me. And understanding the liability and mitigation from a professional's perspective is different than a typical small business. So anyways, hope that's interesting for you. Reach out if we can be of service to you in franchising or Texas business or international trade. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next video.